Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Morning, Nora. How you doing?
Very well, Brian. It's a sunny day here right after the solstice in California. It's going to start to get darker soon, but hasn't yet. So it's very sunny and beautiful and just fantastic. I understand you were just in Chicago and Cleveland, where our guest, our mystery guest, is from.
Yes. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you'll see that we do have a mystery guest. We'll be introducing him in just a second, inviting him into studio. But yeah, we decided at the end of school year, for a combination of my wife's birthday, Father's Day, end of school, we decided to take a road trip. Okay, my first road trip. I come from an island. I come from a tiny island called Oahu. You can go around the whole thing in 3 hours, maybe 3.5. Driving from DC to Chicago, 2 days of 6 hours of driving and through the hills of Pennsylvania. Oh my gosh. That was, I'm not going to say agony, but it was a long time to be behind the wheel and around huge semi trailers and things that I was like, okay, yeah, I can see that there's a romanticism about it. However, I don't see it. And I'm very willing to say that I've crossed that off my list and I don't need to do it again. I'm good with it. I really am. I'm really good with
these things.
Yeah, but I will say this, and maybe we can talk about this, and we'll talk about this in another episode. I want to tell people about the Pokemon exhibit at the Field Museum. I know everybody's like, wait a minute, what is he talking about? They did the fossils of Pokemon, and they did them basically the same as they would for the dinosaurs and things. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I'll be sharing some things on Instagram and I'll post it up there. It is so neat. And coming from an anatomy standpoint and looking at the pelvic structure and the hip joint and looking at all these things, it's phenomenal. It was really kind of neat to geek out in a way that my kids don't.
Total nerd alert.
Absolutely. Well, before we bring, I let Nora take it away with our introduction, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. I really would appreciate it. It helps us with our algorithms. It really helps us bring on more guests. It helps us to reach out to more people and to get more people interested in what we're doing. We're reaching out. We had one of our podcasts a couple weeks ago. We had more downloads then than we've ever had before. So it's phenomenal. Either one of you downloaded every single episode we've ever had, or we're reaching out to more people. So I'm hoping that it's the latter. So do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe, comment where you can. We really appreciate it. Even if it's just a thumbs up or a, hallelujah, or, I don't know about that. Whatever it is, we love to hear it. We really appreciate it. You can do it through Instagram, Moving Combos. We have all of our stuff posted on there. You can also check us out on YouTube under my name, Brian Ritchie. And if you want to reach us by email, you can do it at movingconvos@gmail.com. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nora.
So speaking of Cleveland, we have a guest here, Troy McCarty. So if any of you don't know Troy, Troy's been an educator for Bounce Body for a long time. He's been teaching Pilates, I think, even longer than I have. And one of the reasons I wanted him on was because Troy has studied with many of the elders and has a real rich understanding of, we're calling it the history and the evolution of Pilates over over a long time. And he's got a really nice perspective on all of that. And is, again, an amazing educator. If any of you haven't ever followed him on Instagram, he had just a whole wonderful assortment of little vignettes, little teaching tips that were just incredible. Especially during the pandemic, he just kept all of us going for a long period of time there. So anyway, welcome, Troy McCarty.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Brian. It's so nice to join your podcast with you.
So tell us a little bit tell us your history. So give us either the short or the long version.
Sure. Well, I started Pilates when I was a ballet dancer. I was at School of American Ballet. I got injured. And I thought that was going to be the end of me. But the lady goes, no, there's some guy that does something with springs on the Upper East Side. I don't know anything about it. We're going to send you over there. So I grabbed my little dance bag. I had my leg warmers on. This is during the period of fame. Yeah, I even did PK turns around the fountain at Lincoln Center on my way up to the east side. And nice. I knocked on the door, and sure enough, it was a loft and Bruce King. Now, Bruce King was one of those original teachers that we don't hear so much about because Bruce died pretty early on with the HIV pandemic crisis that, took many of our great artists away from us in New York City. But anyways, I got to study from Bruce, and Bruce was really, really well known for breaking the exercises down for a beginner. I don't know if this is a urban legend or, you might get some call back on this, but somebody once told me that actually Clara asked Bruce first if he wanted to take over the studio. And Bruce said, I still have a dance career. I'm very active in the dance community. I don't have time in my life for this. So yeah, he didn't. So it went to Romana. I don't know how true that is because I've only heard that from one person. Usually when you get to study from elders, if you hear it from two of them, you can pretty much bet that Joe said that. If you hear it from one, you're like, oh, I don't know.
I've heard the same story from Eve Gentry.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think it was like Bruce because Bruce was close, and then Eve, but Eve was in New Mexico by that point. So she was like, no, I've got my own life going on. I mean, from all the elders that I've heard, Romana was not the first choice.
Right.
Just to say that there was other people that he had in mind first. Yeah. Just so you know.
Yeah. So that's good. So that's a source there that, that story hasn't changed too much. So wonderful. Yeah. So Bruce was very good with me. He really took my injury, which was lower back and hip, from lifting a ballerina that was not size appropriate for me to lift. And I was so amazed that I could get her up in the air. I looked up at her, and then it all went south, and it was like crash, boom. Yeah. So I pretty much wrenched my back, did some damage to the hip, and he rehabbed me. Unfortunately, I got to study from Bruce for a good 2 years. Bruce started getting very ill. We're talking a period when, didn't have health insurance and stuff like that. So it was very sad. I went over to Romana and studied from Romana. And it was like a contrast because Bruce was so much into like breaking things down and really getting to the essence of that exercise, and I felt like when I went to Romana really knew the spirit of Joe Pilates. And it was like, you were hearing, maybe Joe say things through Romana. So it was very interesting. It was a very interesting contrast. Both teachers I learned an immense, amount of knowledge from.
So one of the things that strikes me about that is, again, I haven't studied with Bruce. I've studied with Romana and Eve and Carolla and, and a few more modern versions too. And that breaking down piece, when I studied with Romana, she was very like, we don't break things down. She always said that's for the back room. Like all the breakdown stuff, that's in the back room. We're just going to do Pilates. And she really, that was the impression I got it from her at that point. This was, again, many years ago. So that's interesting because I know Eve did a lot of breakdown. Kathy Grant did a lot of breakdown.
Yeah.
Trying to get people up to the level of skill to be able to do the work appropriately.
Yeah, I think what was so interesting about Bruce that he just really understood the essence of each exercise.
Yeah.
And he was able to get into that raw material, that knowledge that exercise was going to put into your body. And he could break it down to a point, both in his language skills and his movement skills, that my body could understand. So, that really worked for me.
That's, for me, that's the essence of the teaching that we all do. Brian as well. Brian has both a Pilates background and a personal training background. But, the best teachers can figure out where they're trying to get to in terms of a movement skill. And then how do I build up the pieces to that movement skill, right? Whether it's mobility or strength or stability, like what are they trying to do? And then find a way to get there. It sounds like Bruce was really a master at that.
Yeah, Bruce could help you go inside your body. And that was a big thing for me. What am I feeling inside? I come from a movement background, so I know how to move my arms, I know how to move my legs connected to my core, but I want to understand more, what should I be feeling inside? And I think that's where Bruce really, really was stellar in his teaching approach, really getting me to kind of like you.
Yeah, sure, sorry to interrupt. I think that is so important from a teaching perspective, whether it just comes from dance, Pilates, any type of movement. You really have to understand the reason for the movement, the why, and you really need to understand what's going on within the body and the importance of how to verbalize it, how to get that person to understand it at the same depth that you do, even if they're a beginner, so that they may not have the same depth, but they still have the essence that they can still get you to move the way that you need to. I've seen choreographers who you would look at them walk and you're thinking, how are they a choreographer? And then they start dancing, you're thinking, oh, now I know why. Oh my gosh, they are the most beautiful movers. And they understand. They have an essence in their body. They have something. And to be able to verbalize that and to do it easily and quickly to someone, that is a skill and that is a gift.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think as approaching the method from a dancer, my body was hungry for knowledge.
Yeah.
And hungry for movement that was going to structure and organize me more. So, he was able to take that and really put it into my body. And therefore, years later, I can, I teach a little bit like Bruce now. So I'm able to do the same thing with my own students. So it was a very, very, very incredible, valuable experience that I learned from him.
Having watched you teach a lot, Troy, because I've sat in on workshops with you, and I think one time we had to co-teach something because somebody wasn't in town or something. I would say the focus that you give to each body is what I find remarkable. Like your presence, your awareness, your ability to just like take in the entire body and what's happening, and then to give that one correction that makes all the difference was what I really have always admired about your teaching. It's focused, it's incredibly present, it's incredibly whole-bodied, and very efficient. And it sounds like you learned some of that anyway from Bruce King, that those are the seeds that were planted in you about how to help a body figure out what to do and do it better.
Right. So Bruce really instilled in me that this is a whole body workout. We're working from the top of the head down to the toes. And your whole body is working to achieve this, whatever we're doing, if it's short box, long box, whatever. So he was able to really help me see that whole body, get that whole image, moving into my body. So, and coming from a ballet background where I was a ballet master for a company for a while, being able to just give one correction to a dancer that's going to make the difference in them. So I was able to take that from my dance career and bring it into the Pilates, studio. So yeah, exactly.
One of the things I've thought a lot as I have grown up in this world is so many of our teachers come from a very, very, very rich movement background, right? Eve Gentry, certainly Bruce King, Romana to some extent. All of them were intense dancers, many of them for their whole lives, before and during their Pilates career. And there's something about just watching that many people move and trying to help them move better that, creates that efficiency. Like for you being a ballet master, this is the one thing you need to work on. Like shift your weight over here, right? Yeah. Or whatever it is, that one little cue that's like, oh, now I get it. And understand the body enough, not in a broken down anatomy way, but in a whole body, how does it integrate way to be able to give that one cue is remarkable.
Yeah. And I think like, as a dancer, you approach, that alignment of the body. You're constantly scanning that alignment. And you're, the reformer is this like beautiful grid. It's like, a canvas, and it's got lines, and you can just really line everything up to see that, impurity of that alignment. And it's like, it becomes an eyesore to me. I get fixated on that one thing, and like I can't get off of it. But as I get older, I've learned how to control that, that part of me there. So yes, exactly.
You must have a fun time going through, like a supermarket or walking down the park. Right, because like at this point, I can't not see the weirdness that's happening around me, and sometimes it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And you try not to look horrified, but you're horrified. Like, what is happening over there?
It's airports for me. When I'm sitting waiting on a flight, and I'm purely bored, I don't want to be there. Right. I start looking at people's movement, and I'm like, oh. If that person came to me, I'd charge them double. How did that person ever like walk from their car to the airport without, like majorly injuring themselves or somebody else? Yeah. And I start shaking my head, and my husband's like, Troy, stop it. That's not polite, So yeah. And I make little comments. Yeah.
Judgment is pouring out of you in those moments, right? Like it's just happening. Like I can't help myself. This is not happening. This is not attractive.
Yeah, you know what?
I think we all go through that. It's funny.
Absolutely. I wonder if our elders went through that with students too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think so.
We've all seen that one video of Joe teaching the one guy where he's pushing on the head. First thing, I don't think he's pushing that hard, because we have to step back in time of that video because the cameras were not that good as like what we have now. But I love that video because it shows to me that even Joe struggled with some of his students,
Yes.
And getting that guy to go where Joe wanted him to go was a struggle. And I think as teachers, we all have those, special clients and students that we have a little bit of a struggle with. So, I mean, I'm not going to push on there. I would like to, but I'm not going to raise my hand on a client, or a student. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something. I'm going to tie in with this. In the age of, I do a number of people through Zoom or FaceTime, however you want to put it, through online. And sometimes I finding that one cue can be challenging, because some of us already have clients who are body dyslexic. They really don't know their right from their left, their up from their down. They don't know what they're doing. And to be able to do it when we're not present and we can't put our hands on them, when we can't touch them, we can't cue them physically, we have to do it purely through our voice. It can be so much more challenging, and it's so important to be able to find that one cue to make the biggest difference. And sometimes knowing when to just back off and say, well, we're not doing that one today, or, okay, this is about as good as we're going to get. It's good enough for today. We'll work on it in the future. Have you found that in the age of online, it's become a little more challenging?
Yes. And I find that teaching online has definitely helped me with my visual skills. Really, really having to see the person and making them stop. It's like, can you repeat that right there? During Zoom, I'm a tactile guy. I love to use my hands. These are probably the most important tools we have as Pilates teachers. But, during the pandemic, I was like, my God, they're talking that we can't even touch anybody. How my whole career is changing in front of my eyes. So so I started really kind of developing that, that visual with the students, and I teach that in my courses. What are we looking at? What exactly are you looking at? Are you scanning the body? Are you too busy worrying about how many springs or whatever, So yes, the visual is very important, and doing it online is definitely can be a challenging, atmosphere to do it in. Exactly.
Yeah, I find with clients it's very challenging that way.
Yeah, I always wonder, like, what do you think the elders would think of us doing Pilates on Zoom? Yeah.
I mean, so a couple thoughts, because I have thought about this actually a fair bit, thinking about their different personalities. I mean, Joe, I think, do you think he would be happy about the incredible popularity of Pilates right now? I mean, that was kind of his dream, but I'm not sure he would picture it being quite such a kaleidoscopic variety that I doubt that's what he had in mind. You know, and then I also think about all the elders that I worked with were so precise and detail oriented. And by the time I met them, they were all in their 60s or 70s or 80s for that matter. And so they're all a little bit like, this is what you do. Like they did not have, they're just, this is how it is. They're not going to make you feel good necessarily. They're just going to tell you what it is. So I think many of them would be horrified, honestly, because they also, most of them taught privates or small groups. You know, they didn't teach classes. They didn't teach 20 reformers in a room and everybody doing the same thing. So I don't know. It's a different world. It's a much less intimate, much less personal world, you know, in so many ways.
Yeah, I think, you know, you're absolutely right, Nora. I think Joe would like that this has really evolved all around the world. You know, Pilates is really popular right now, but I don't know if he would be so into everything that we're seeing that's going on.
I think he'd be a little horrified.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the Pilates police because we have plenty of those on Instagram, and I've come after me a few times, you know. You know, but you know, I like the variety that I see. I love the creativity I see, but some of the, you know, the other things that I'm seeing, I'm like, you know, that's pretty dangerous. You know, I hope you're not teaching that to your students or your clients, you know. So yeah.
There was a few years ago, I was teaching in Boston and at a POT, and I was teaching the anatomy in 3 dimensions. And there was someone in the class who was very classically trained and was almost refusing to wrap their brain around movement in any way that wasn't the original repertoire. Anything that I would bring up about movement, it was, well, that's not what Joe said. That's not what Joe said. And finally, I just said, okay, when did he pass away? When did he stop evolving as a human being? If he were to live now with all the new technologies that we have, don't you think he would have taken in a lot of that and created things that we may never have? Just because his brain was working at a level that obviously for what he's created on a wavelength that no one else had before. So I look at it from that standpoint and say, if he was here, would he take to things like Zoom or whatnot? Would he take to all of this and really acclimate and evolve into being so much more? I don't know, but I like to think that he had that mind that was more wanting to expand rather than, you know, be so rigid in the end. And I could be completely wrong, but that's how my brain was.
I think you're right on track because, you know, if we look at Joe and his inventions, there's a lot of gadgets. We got, you know, we got the foot corrector, we got the toe separator, we got the pedipole, we've got all these, we got the, what is that, the breathometer?
The weighted foot things, like he had weighted like little booty things.
So the shoes, the weighted shoes. Exactly. So you know, the man was into gadgets. So I think like, you know, having this technology, I think that he would have totally embraced and really, let's do it. You know, let's go for this. And but yeah, again, I think like, you know, like what Nora said, it's become a kaleidoscope. We're seeing so many different things that like, sometimes I wonder if Joe's rolling around in his grave going, I never meant it to be that way, you know? So,
I'm sure. I'm sure. I think we're all kind of sure that there's moments of what the heck? I mean, how many people do you know now who say, oh yeah, I've done Pilates, and you're kind of like, and then you know, they come into your studio and they show you what they do. And it's like, whoa, has no bearing whatsoever to anything you would recognize as Pilates, and you've been exposed to a good bit of the world for a really long time. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting that that's called Pilates, but let's just get you moving in the right way, and we're going to go over here and do this. So you talked a little bit about Bruce King, which I think is great, and then I know Romana was another stream, right? Through a stream for you. What was that about? Like, how did things change when you started working with her? What was that difference in teaching?
Romana was truly understood the spirit of Joe. So
what do you mean by that? Like, explain that a little bit.
I think like she would give quotes that Joe used to say. And she would talk about Uncle Joe, a lot. And so tell stories about Joe. And in some of the movements, I can remember her saying, Joe wanted it done this way, Whereas Bruce, said, I learned this from Joe, but I want to break this down for you so that you really understand this. So I think it was two different types of teachers, happening here. And, Romana, at the time that I studied from Romana, it was at Dragos. It was a very busy place. Pilates is now starting to get, a little bit more known, and a lot of people are coming in to Dragos to find out about this method, to learn it with their own bodies. So Romana, was teaching at Dragos, and Pilates is now really getting really popular. A lot of people are coming in. So I think Romana was very, very worried, that there was going to be injuries. So it was a different type of instruction going on, and she had her daughter helping out and things like that. So yes, exactly. So it was quite different. Bruce was really one-on-one. Romana, sometimes I was in a class, but she was really a lovely person. I really learned a lot from Romana. And I'm very, 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 happy that I got that experience in my life. So, yeah.
When did Romana, you start teaching?
What?
Sorry.
I started teaching in 1985. I opened up my first studio.
Okay.
Yeah. And Romana used to say, I can remember her saying this, if you become a teacher and if you injure somebody, I'll hear about it and I'll come and visit you. And I was always I can't injure anybody. I don't want Romana coming up to my door. I was a little bit, I was a little afraid of Romana at times, she could be tough. Yeah, she could be tough. So, yeah. So, yeah.
So what inspired you to start teaching?
I was either going to stay in the dance world and become, full-time ballet master work. And as you know, it's not the most glorious job. Dancers will blame their everything on the ballet master. I tried it, it was not what I wanted. I thought they were all my friends,
until you had to tell them what to do, right?
And then the table turned and they were not nice to me. So I was I don't think I want to do this. I have all this training in Pilates. I was teaching a little bit on this side. So I went full blown into Pilates. Dennis Nahat from the Cleveland Ballet gives me a call and says, hey, bring it down here. You can teach, in the school, and things like that. And he goes, bring that stuff you do with Springs. We don't have it in Cleveland, Ohio again. So that's how I arrived here. So I was one of those first studios in the Midwest, 1985. And,
you were seriously one of the first studios anywhere, actually.
Yeah.
Vogue magazine did an article about the top 10 studios. Yeah. And I had made that article, and boom, as soon as I made that article, that next Friday came the lawsuit letter from a person I don't even want to say the person's name.
Yeah, no.
Came the lawsuit letter, and I was so incensed that I got this letter. That I wrote on the letter, no effing way, and I sent it back, registered mail to him.
Nice.
Not my smartest move in my life because it put me on the radar.
Well, it put you in the firing line, right?
Exactly. So yeah, he was I used to get a letter every Friday morning, registered mail.
Oh, Jesus.
I got 7 of them. Yeah.
That's no fun.
No, it wasn't. It was scary.
No,
time
absolutely.
too, because you're teaching this new method. There's a buzz about it. Everybody wants to get into it. Madonna's doing it. She's spreading the word. I would get phone calls. I want to do this exercise that Madonna does. I hear you have it. And then all of a sudden, you have this letter saying, you can't use that word. If you use that word, we will take you on, in court. And then to use that word, you've got to retrain, you've got to pay us and blah, blah. It was a bad situation. It was our dark period of the Pilates world. So.
Well, and it had to be, because every studio that I know, with very few exceptions, there was no deep pocket there. Right? We're all out there being pioneers in a field that nobody knew about, nobody cared about. There was not a lot of financial reward, and we're trying to make it happen. I was at St. Francis, so we had a little bit of a legal background behind us. But most of the studios were like yours, or Deborah Lessons, or, the ones in LA. You got nothing, and suddenly somebody's threatening you with a lawsuit, which could cost you, who knows, untold amounts of money that you don't have, right?
Yeah, litigation is expensive.
Yeah.
So, and I was very worried about that. And I was trying to figure out ways to get around this situation. And I was upset. I was like, geez, this guy's really after me. And now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, whatever. It made me more of a teacher, because it made me teach stronger, because it's just like, listen, if I can't use the word Pilates, then I'm going to have to really develop my teaching more. And we're going to have to, say Troy McCarty or whatever,
Right.
Well, that's the thing I was just thinking, is how short-sighted someone can be to want to get these few studios out there to pay them money, instead of let's grow this brand to really establish something so much bigger than New York City, so much bigger than just the United States. And now, Nora, we've all been all around the world. It is gigantic. And just think how short-sighted that was way back then, to, I want to be paid just so you can use the name. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I found a lot of that. It was a little bit on the ego-driven side. And it was hard that, to see, I can understand why Romana wanted to get involved, because she was probably tired of working on an hourly wage, at the studios, and she wanted to try to make some passive income. I get it. Passive income is a wonderful thing for all of us, but it was just the way it was done. And it was really hard. It was a scary time, for all of us. So, yeah.
And there was a moment when, honestly, the method could have died. It really, there was, I remember at the first meeting of whatever was called Pilates Institute in Santa Fe, there was like 150 of us, basically. And that was pretty much it. That was most of the people that were involved in any serious way in the industry. That was it. So, and that was right before the lawsuit, and the lawsuit could have killed it. It really could have. It could have been like, that was the end of that. And smash, the whole thing was gone. Because based on the future from there, Romana and the classical people were not capable of really bringing it out in a way that would make it what it is today. The classical world was so insular and so specific and so kind of whatever they were, that I think if it had been, everybody else had left and they were the only ones left in the promoting the method, I don't know where it would have gone. I don't think it would have been able to grow like it did.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a thought. But.
Exactly right. No. And thank God, things turned the way it did, and that, we can all teach this wonderful method that this man left for us to teach. And daily, like every time I'm teaching, I think I learned something, more about it, a deep dive into jackknife or deep dive into, short box. And it's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that 20 years ago? And I think as teachers, we mature a lot. I definitely have a different style than when I first started, and I'm very selective about, my cues that I give somebody. When I first started, it was 30,000 cue sessions, man. I was throwing those babies out there. This seeing what would stick, and I can remember this one lady goes, Troy, I loved your class. All 30,000 cues really worked for me. And she's like exhausted. I'm hoarse because I've done nothing but blah, 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 so, nerves and anxiety of, when we're young. How were you, Nora, when you first started teaching?
I was still thinking about that. It's the shotgun approach because you don't really know what's going to work. So you just keep throwing stuff out there, hoping like throwing spaghetti on the wall, what's going to stick.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because I remember I studied a lot early on with Alan Herdman. He was a real influence at St. Francis. And then I went into this whole, very kind of scientific phase and anatomy and blah, blah, blah. And then I came back to take a class with Alan at a PMA. And man, the efficiency, the clarity, he didn't say a lot, but everything he said landed.
Totally.
And said everything it needed to say. And it was like, and that was actually I didn't realize that he was my model when I first was teaching, we're learning under him. Like I didn't realize how much of that I'd absorbed until I saw that and went, oh, that's what I've been aspiring to all this time.
Yeah.
And let go of all the fanciness and just say the thing.
And with the British accent, it just sounds so much more.
So much better.
Yeah.
It's just so much more meaningful.
Yeah. It's just like, like I've turned on Masterpiece Theater and I'm going to really, really watch this to understand this. Yeah. Brian, how do you feel? How do you feel your teaching has evolved through the years?
I was one.
This
is interesting because my way is more just pure movement. So I do it through whatever tool is in front of me. So I'm not traditionally Pilates based. I do a lot more fitness, but I bring in pieces from everywhere because to me, it's whatever tool is going to work for the client in front of me for what I need to get them to do. And my cueing has become very specific and very focused over the years. I think at the beginning, like you said, I think I was much more tactile at the beginning, that I would just put people in the right position, that it'd be like, just do this and just sort of move them. Because if you can feel it, you can do it, sort of thing. And as I've gotten a little older, I think I've understood, okay, you need to make sure that the verbalization is there. The tactile cue is there. Everything is there to get the client to do whatever they need because we all learn differently. So whichever client is in front of me, I want to make sure, okay, are they kinesthetic? Are they auditory? However they're learning, do they have to watch me first? Whatever it is, I can, cue in on that person and say, okay, they need this. I had a client today who needed to see me do an exercise. I realized at that moment, okay, she's so visual. So I immediately jumped down, showed it to her. Oh, okay. She did it perfectly. Wow. But I was trying to get her to do it auditorily and it was not working. So it's like, oh, okay, boom, here, look, you got it. And she was able to do it. So I think I've learned more about that as I've gotten older and my evolution. I haven't been in the industry quite as long as you have, but not that far off. I think Nora and I started around the same time in the very early 90s. So yeah, and I think the older I get, the more, like you said, we're focusing on different things. We're learning every day. We're always relearning things and thinking, why didn't I learn that before? Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
I've been doing the same thing now for how long? And I didn't think of it like that.
Also, I think as we mature with our teaching, we begin to look at the body in front of us and we're starting to think more about their nervous system, their emotional.
Yes. Absolutely.
What background do they come from? What's going on in their life that might be affecting this? Okay. At the age when I started, I didn't think of any of those things. It was like, how many spreads? What's the movement? You know, you got to sit down on that reformer, right? You know, it was like, you know, there was nothing. It was just like, you pump your arms and you breathe. What's so hard about this, you know? And then,
Yep.
and then, you know, as I started maturing and getting older and more secure with my own teaching, it's like, you know, there's a whole nervous system thing going on with this method, you know, and there's some emotional content going on. And, you know, and that's why, like, you know, like working as an educator, I tell these young teachers, you know, you've really got to discover the body that's in front of you. You've got to really look and look past the movement, look inside that body, look inside that mind, and it's going to give you a lot of answers. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I thinking about that evolution, there's certainly seeing the person, the whole person behind the movement, and recognizing, you know, learning to adjust your teaching style, as Brian was talking about, to that body in front of you, just so that they can hear you. Because, you know, you say the same thing to 3 different people and one hears you and the other 2 are like, what are you talking about? So there's that piece, but there's also, in terms of, I've spent so much time doing rehab. So mostly I've been problem solving, like for most of my career, and then teaching teachers. But problem solving has really been part of it. And so much of that, I want to tie this back to what you said earlier, which is how exercises just keep opening up, right? Like, you think you got this, you've done it, you've taught this 27,000 times. And then one day you're teaching it and going, oh, there's a whole nother piece of this. Like, this may sound stupid to many of you, but I remember with short spine. Okay. Short spine is a basic Pilates exercise, right? And for the longest time, I was really focused on the front of the body.
Yeah.
Right. This should all be done from the front of the body, because Pilates is sort of focused that way in a lot of ways. And I was like, oh no, this is a back body exercise. Like, if you can't lift up yourself up from the back and get that length of the whole back body, you can't actually hold that position up at the top and then, you know, go through the whole thing. And that was a moment many years ago, but that was a moment of like, oh, all the things I wasn't getting or hadn't gotten yet, you know, until I'd really explored it and taught it a whole bunch.
Yeah, and I think some of it too, with what we're seeing now, is that a lot of these new teachers really do not know the essence of these exercises.
No.
They're young. They don't know what they're after yet. And I think as educators, it's up to us. So we preserve this method, because lately I've been feeling we're kind of losing control here, you know, of the method. Yeah. And I think it's up to us as educators to really drive, you know, that into their heads and into their bodies, so this carries on and we can keep, you know, some resemblance to, you know, the original method. And I think, you know, Joe really wanted us all to experience.
A couple weeks ago, I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, we talked, Nora and I talked about influences versus educators. And I kind of want to get your opinion on this, because as we've gotten further along in the evolution of Pilates and the evolution of movement and fitness and everything else that this sort of comes into, what I'm finding is the younger trainers, the younger Pilates instructors, the younger movement professionals are trying to do too much too soon. They're trying to be the top of the food, you know, the top of the food chain within their first year before they know anything, because they see other young people that look like them and sound like them on all the social media things. They automatically assume that they should be the same way and that they should have all of this information. Whereas the 3 of us together have nearly 100 years of movement background. That's a lot of experience that we've got under our belt. So we can say things that we know to be true because we've seen it, done it, been there, you know, got the t-shirt, you know, years ago. And so I wanted to get your opinion on that, on when you're training those younger educators or those younger Pilates instructors, how to keep them, I hate to use a phrase, but how to humble them without humbling them. You know what I mean? How to let them know that they still have a lot to learn and that this is a progression and an evolution within themselves, not just within the industry.
When I teach, I try to create dialogue. So it's just not me giving them, lecture. I try to create communication with them. Nice. And I try to get up in their heads with them. And, these are young people that they're so used to instant gratification because they, if they don't like that, they go to the next one. Oh, that satisfies. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I kind of bring that into play and say you're not scrolling. You're working with movement. You're working with a person here, a human body, a human being. Nice. And it can't come overnight. Your teaching's going to evolve as you're going to see this body evolve in front of you. And what works now may not work in a couple of years because that body will change a little bit as you are going to change because you have now more experience. They all want to become these big name teachers and travel the world. Well, it took me years to get my, I don't even know if I'm a big name out there, but it took me years to get where I'm at and to get invited to teach at these places. And I just feel like with our younger generation, they want it right now. And that's, that's the mindset they're in, and I think a lot comes from our social media. I mean, like your last, episode, you talked about influencer. Do they really do Pilates? I don't know.
Maybe.
Arguably.
What they do.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not sure what they're doing.
They really know how to work Instagram and they really know how to work that algorithm to benefit them. And that I'll give to them. And I've learned a lot from watching those people. And I've had some, consultations where I've hired somebody. All right, tell me how to do this. Because Instagram is a very powerful application for Pilates teachers. We put ourselves out there. And I get a lot of invitations from, across the globe to come and guest teach because they saw me on Instagram. So, I play that out. But we're finding too that people is why do I want to pay you all this money to get trained when I can go on Instagram and, oh, look, somebody's doing the hundreds. I'll just mimic that.
Yeah. I was literally just talking to an educator a couple of hours ago about this very thing, that she went to a Pilates conference and one of the people who was teaching was one of these influencers out of, I think, Los Angeles or something, and spent the entire session teaching things like how to put on the springs properly and how to adjust the spring tension. It wasn't teaching anything beyond the most basic information. And this educator said, I don't really think that they knew very much about Pilates, but they had a huge following. And that's all that mattered. And that's all that got them invited to teach in the first place. And I think we're seeing a lot of that where these people don't have very much to say. They don't have a voice, but they're really good in 30-second clips. But put them in a 3-hour course, that's a little different. What do they have to say?
They don't have the attention span, first of all, is what I'm finding.
No.
And it's very hard, I'm trying to hit those 16 hours in some of these courses. And I'm telling you, by that 14, me included, I'm like, oh, okay, guys, let's repeat this exercise one more time. So the attention span, social media has ruined that for us, because we just instantly can change our attention to something new and flashy and shiny. So, yeah, exactly. And teaching, around the world, I get to do, which is, quite an honor, it's a problem we're seeing all over the place.
Everywhere.
I was just in Mexico City teaching a couple weeks ago, and there were some influencers. Now, I will give them this. They could move and they understood it, but they were so incredible with their phones, and, getting it right on Instagram, and boom, it was I was amazed with it. I was like, teach me. Very, very interesting. I kind of feel like, do you think Instagram is going to be the downfall of Pilates, or do you think it's going to be?
I mean, take this for what it is, but I feel like Pilates has an incredible amount of value. I do. I think it's one of the best, most complete foundational movement systems on the planet. And I think if you do Pilates for a period of time, your body will be in better shape. Like you'll be able to do more things with more resilience and less injuries than if you didn't do Pilates. Like that's just been my experience for, 30 plus years. So I think that will stay. And I think like with any of these bubbles, because this is a bubble, right? Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. And I mean, I think too, from teaching educators or teaching teachers, like I've taught for years, there's about, I call it the 5%. There's about 5% of any class, of any group of teachers that I ever work with that are going to take this on as a profession. They're going to be serious about it. They're going to do the work. They're going to learn the stuff, and they're going to move forward, and they'll be doing this for 20 years. Roughly 95%, and I don't think I'm actually too generous with that, are like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to do this for a little while. They pop in, they teach for a couple of years at Club Pilates or wherever else, or at a studio. It's too hard. It doesn't make enough money. Then they go off and get married or have a kid, and they move on to the next phase of their life. I think a good chunk of the bubble right now is going to end up being part-timers, hobbyists. They'll get whatever they get out of it, which may be great, and then they'll move into whatever the next thing is. That's always been true. I mean, when I look at the numbers from Bounce Body and how many students start with Mat 1 and Reformer 1 and then go on to be comprehensive, like there's always a small percentage that goes on. I mean, it may be 25, 30%, but there's a big chunk that go, oh, this is great. I want to be a Pilates teacher. And then they try it for a while and go, this is too hard.
Yeah.
Because it kind of is.
Yeah.
They find out what it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as glamorous.
And I think they don't get that fame. I think that's the other thing is I think they're looking for that gratification that comes not only from, being famous and all of this, but having that Instagram fame of being recognized and all of this without realizing that Pilates, movement, fitness is a very small bubble in this world. It's very
Absolutely.
small.
Nobody really cares, let's be honest.
No, I don't think any of us have walked through an
world.
airport and have had people screaming our names and chasing us for autographs. I don't think that's happened. So I think that in general, if that's what they're looking for and they're looking for Pilates to do that for them, I think they're sadly mistaken. And I think that there will be a few that can make their name, but it's more being an Instagram star or being a social media star than it is being a Pilates teaching star. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for fame. They're
looking for fame. And this is a funny world to be famous in. I mean, Troy, you and I are probably the two more of the better known people in this world at the moment, just because we've been around a lot and a long time and a lot of places. But it's still like this is whatever they're hoping for. This isn't it. Like, just to say.
I think it's glamorous. I'm taking off to Florence in a couple of days with Jo. I love her, Jolita. I was just on the phone before, and what they don't understand is like first thing. We fly all night.
Exactly. We land.
We're exhausted when we get off that
toasted.
plane. And we put that Pilates hat on and we stand up straight. And it's just like, whoa, And even telling my clients, because my clients kind of feel like I take a lot of vacations because I guest a lot. And I'm like, no, this is not a vacation. I'm traveling to another studio. And it's just
working
in a different
ass
country,
off.
Right? Different students that don't speak our language, and I've got a translator now to deal with. And we all know when we teach, internationally, a translator can make or break you. I have translator nightmare anxiety before.
Yep, as you should.
I had one in Russia. We were like that the whole time. And so it's not as glamorous as what they think. But then on the other hand, we get to make friends all over the world,
Yes, absolutely.
Which is, the beauty of, of our work. We get to travel and we get to make new connections and, see what's going on and feel that, that pulse of the community globally. And I think that's like an incredible thing.
I wanted to roll back just a little bit because one of the things that you asked, and I just wanted to bring this up. When I see a lot of stuff on Instagram, some of it is fantastic. Some of it is really nice. I think additions to the repertoire because the repertoire does have in my opinion, some limitations in terms of functional movement skills and things like that. But the other thing too is most of my clients, and I think most of the clients that I've ever met in any Pilates studio, don't need that yet. They need to like get their footwork going and maybe some feet in straps and maybe some core work and maybe some arm work, because they're not there yet. You know, like I look at these things and I think that's great. You know, that's fantastic that they can do that. It looks beautiful, whatever. But I'm thinking the clients that I know need to basically get their hips and their knees and their ankles working together. Yeah. And if they can do that, that will make a difference in their lives. It's not glamorous. Like that is not glamorous. Footwork is not like, you know, that exciting to watch, but that makes such a huge difference in really changing people's lives. And that's always the thing too, is, and I say this a lot to teachers, because young teachers always think they need more. I need more exercises. I need more things. I need more stuff. I was like, no, actually you don't. You just need to teach the exercises you have better. Right? I say that all the time. You just need to really dive in there, really get that person precise. And I can make anybody have a hard workout doing a most basic workout by making them do it right. Yeah. Right? It's not about what they're doing. It's like, if they're really doing it right and concentrating, I can make anybody sweat. I can make anybody feel like they've just killed themselves. Yeah. And they're not doing anything fancy. They're just doing it well, you know?
Well, I think we're seeing so much of, you know, these other studios where the music is pumping and there's lights now that, you know, flick on.
I know.
And like, you know, it's a super high buzz they get from the class.
Yes.
And then they come to people like us and we go, okay, now shut up and lay down.
Exactly.
I'm turning the music off because we want to focus.
And pay attention.
Yeah,
like
you
what?
have to pay attention. Yeah, that's my other beat. The attention skills of both students and clients. You know, as I get older, my filters are starting to diminish, and I have really let some people have it about not listening. You know,
it's like, put your phone down.
Yeah. Listen to what I'm telling you, you know, and, you know, don't ask me stupid questions like how many springs after I've said 3 times how many springs you're supposed to put on. That's where your head is right now, you know? So, yeah, I really try to instill that into, you know, the teacher training, to really, really get them excited about what they're going to teach and how to get better at teaching. It's like movement literacy. You're going to be a very, very, you know, movement specialist. And you know, and it's hard. It's been hard. I've seen what I thought they were going to stick with it, and they drop out because they lose their, you know, their gusto and getting the whole, you know, comprehensive certification under their belt. So, and I don't know if that's going to get better or it's going to get worse.
I think it's going to get worse because, again, it's just, this is hard work. I mean, you know, not to put define a point on it, but if you really want to get comprehensively trained, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of attention. It's a lot of practice sessions with clients. And if you're not interested, or this kind of work isn't interesting to you and doesn't feed you in some way, why would you go through that much trouble? I mean, go and become, you know, a finance guy or a wealth manager or something else. It's probably less work in a lot of ways, and certainly more reward. So you know, I think what I do think, and optimistically, I think we're going to be left with those that are really interested. Those are the ones that are going to continue on and keep this going, because there's enough of them. You know many of them. I know many of them that are just like, they're committed, and they will keep carrying this Pilates world forward on their shoulders for, you know, until they move it on to the next person and those people coming up.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's my hope.
I hope so too. You know, it's been it's definitely a challenge, but it's a challenge that I'm really, you know, I'm willing to take on to really help preserve, you know, that we have something to teach and that it hasn't changed too much. And, you know, that's the other thing, like, you know, like I try to stick, you know, with my classical roots a lot, but there's just, you know, sometimes that body in front of me is just not able to take some of that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, I really try to, you know, honor it, but, you know, I make small changes, and, you know, who helped me the most with that was Julian Lilliford. You know, Julian and I were good buddies. I went out to, you know, San Diego a lot to his studio, and he came to Cleveland a lot. We were good friends, and Julian was amazing at doing that. He really had an incredible sense of that person, the movement that he wanted. Yeah, so I have a Julian story I have to tell.
Yes.
Julie and I stayed up drinking way too much wine one night. You know, he's British, so
typical.
Yeah, he was like, I'm British, I can drink. So we're drinking lots of wine. We get to the studio at 7 o'clock in the morning. Julian puts me on the reformer and he goes, "Okay, mate, let's do climb a tree." No warm up, no nothing.
Oh,
and I'm still feeling the effects. So
oh God.
I climbed that tree. I climb back down my tree. I go into the well. I hang out for a moment. I bring my head up. I climb and I threw up.
I bet. I was going to say that's what I would have done.
And like, you know, I'm holding my leg. I went, "Ah!" And he looked at me with these wide eyes and he goes, "Mate, I can't believe it. You just vomited in my studio." He was so much fun.
He was so much fun. I miss him so all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. How could you not?
Brian, did you get to know Julian?
Never did. Never met him.
He was a lot great teacher. And Julian, I really kind of took me out of being the classical world and brought me a little bit more into a contemporary world. And the things that he taught me were so valid and so incredible. And he had that Martha Graham technique in his body. He understood that, and he was able to take that technique and put it into, the method. I think that's why Ron Fletcher loved him so much, because, Ron Fletcher was also Martha Graham, and, certainly knew, because Julian was the star of the Martha Graham, dance company,
Yeah.
And, Julian was rehearsing Baryshnikov when Martha Graham, wanted, Baryshnikov to do, I forget what ballet it was, but one of the.
I remember that. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah. Wow.
Great.
All right, my dear.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for a wonderfully wide-ranging conversation on fantastic
This is awesome.
topics. Yeah, I loved it.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you guys.
It's been a real honor.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us as well. We really appreciate every one of you who listens every week. Do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Reach out to us at movingcombos@gmail.com. Check us out on Instagram. Moving Combos is our handle there. And you can see what Troy looks like and see us have this conversation on YouTube. And it's under my name, Brian Ritchie. And for Nora St. John and Troy McCarty, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.